Look at the eyes of the person standing directly in front of you, the one attempting to guilt you into a compromise, a concession, or a surrender of your own resources, and ask yourself, with the cold precision of an architect, why you feel that sudden, hollow, and sickening ache of obligation radiating from your chest. In 2026, the Matrix has successfully and invisibly weaponized your social programming, your inherent empathy, your ingrained politeness, and your deep-seated desire to be perceived by the collective as a good man, and turned it into a high-precision, biological targeting system. To the domestic predator and the everyday manipulator, your kindness is not a moral virtue. It is a tactical vulnerability. It is an unshielded port in your internal operating system. They do not attack your citadel with a visible battering ram. They infiltrate your perimeter through the service entrance of your conscience. They utilize the dopamine deception of feigned vulnerability and manufactured crisis to bypass your resource dome, making you feel personally and morally responsible for their chronic stagnation, their repeated failures, and their total lack of a sovereign vector. This is the stench of the guilt trap, a psychological infection that rots your authority from the inside out. If you are operating under the subordinate code of modern sanitized morality, you are essentially painting a massive target on your own back. You are broadcasting to every parasite in your perimeter that your boundaries are not only negotiable but easily dismantled if they simply cry loud enough, act weak enough, or remind you of a shared history that they have already devalued. You have been meticulously trained by the system to be a support unit for the weak, while the architect in your DNA is screaming for the primal grounding of the sovereign hunter who knows that resources spent on the ungrateful are resources stolen from the empire. Your social software is not just outdated, it is fundamentally compromised by a system that wants you manageable. It was originally forged for a tribal reality of 50 people, where every individual contributed to the kill and shared the metabolic cost of survival. It was never designed for the hyper-complex, hyper-manipulative landscape of the modern world, where predators use vulnerability as a weapon of conquest. When you allow someone to manage your behavior through the lever of guilt, you are authorizing a full-scale biological hijack. Your brain's conflict resolution protocol is triggered in an unhealthy loop, causing you to hemorrhage your capital, your precious time, and your cognitive focus just to stop the grating social noise of their disapproval. This is a systemic drain on your 18 million per month potential that no spreadsheet can fully quantify. You think you are keeping the peace or being the bigger person, but in the raw language of the glacier, you're actually funding the physical log of decay in your own life. Every single time you say yes to a parasite just to avoid the momentary discomfort of feeling bad, you are physically shrinking your own territory. You are telling your internal Wojak leader to stand down and submit, because the transient feelings of a service unit are more important than the strategic expansion of your citadel. This is the ultimate betrayal of your own biological mission. Your kindness has been twisted into a leash, and the people holding it are the very ones who would vanish into the grey noise of the Matrix the moment your resource well ran dry. You must develop a visceral, bone-deep visual rage against the nice guy persona that has been installed in your psyche like a virus. It is not nice to let your mission be bled dry by those who refuse to hunt. It is a catastrophic failure of leadership and a violation of the achievement code. The first tactical step in reclaiming your sovereign power is the immediate activation of the silent power, silent force protocol. This is not the loud, performative, and ultimately weak aggression of the insecure unit. It is the silence of the hunter, applied with surgical precision to the realm of social warfare. Manipulators and domestic predators feed exclusively on your reactions. They are emotional scavengers who use baiting to pull you into a verbal labyrinth where they can use your own sense of logic and fairness as a weapon against you. Silent power is the absolute refusal to participate in the pre-written script of the manipulator. When a predator attempts to trigger your guilt or shame, you do not defend yourself, you do not explain your position, and you do not offer alternatives. Instead, you respond with the static stare, a cold, unblinking observation of their attempt. You offer no emotional feedback, no verbal validation, and no metabolic data. You become a psychological black hole for their manipulation. This creates a massive, terrifying power vacuum that the manipulator's fragile system cannot handle. Their social intelligence is predicated entirely on the ability to predict, provoke, and control your response. When you provide zero data, their entire manipulative algorithm crashes and burns. You are re-establishing your primal grounding by demonstrating that your internal chemical state is not for sale at any price. You are the architect, and your metabolic frequency is determined solely by the requirements of your mission, not by the domestic stench of their manufactured theatrical drama. By remaining silent, you are forcing forcing them to confront the vacuum of their own parasitic existence. Look at Lucky and Tyson when a stranger or a weak signal attempts to entice them or distract them from their post. They do not look for social harmony or politeness. They are anchored in the hierarchy of intent. If the incoming signal is hollow, manipulative, or deceptive, they remain unmoved, perfectly centered in their own biological authority. You must implement this exact same biological barrier in your social interactions. The recognition of a manipulator is the ultimate insight tax. Once you have seen the hidden signs, you are no longer allowed the luxury of being a victim. Once you identify the strategic use of weakness, the circular logic of shifted blame, and the subtle information scarcity used to keep you off balance, you are biologically obligated to act. You do not discuss the manipulation with the manipulator. To do so is to offer them more data to refine their next attack. You simply close the perimeter. You withdraw your attention, your engagement, and your presence, which are the most valuable scarcity resources you possess. By moving into the silence of the hunter, you are signaling to the system that the service entrance is closed for good. You are reclaiming the color of freedom by demonstrating that you are fundamentally immune to their chemical and emotional warfare. This is the essence of silent power, the terrifying ability to remain completely unmovable in a world defined by frantic, parasitic, and high-decibel noise. You are no longer a target to be managed. You are a sovereign entity that has become far too expensive for the matrix to manipulate. The second stage of this deep-level mastery of dark psychology involves the aggressive decoding of the domestic predator. You must realize that most manipulators in your immediate perimeter, be they family, friends, or associates, don't even consciously know they are running these protocols. They are simply executing the parasite software. They learn to survive their own self-inflicted stagnation. They utilize the language of the renter to describe their life's problems, making it appear as though external circumstances, luck, or the system are the only reasons they require a constant infusion of your resources. This is a sophisticated dopamine deception designed to trigger your hero protocol. They want you to feel the rush of being the savior so that you won't notice they are effectively harvesting your life force. But the architect knows that in the raw world of the hunt, a hero is just a high-level slave who works for the appreciation of the weak rather than the expansion of the empire. You must immediately replace the hero protocol with the sovereign resource audit. Every time someone presents a crisis that requires your intervention, you must scan for the physical log of decay. Have they exhausted their own metabolic options? Is their vector truly aligned with yours? Or are they just looking for a dopamine bypass to avoid the grueling work of the great hunt? If they are a service unit looking for a free ride on your glacier, your answer must be a silent, uncompromising, permanent withdrawal of all support. To bridge the authority gap in your personal and professional life, you must become a master of the vector of absolute detachment. Manipulation only possesses power if you are invested in the outcome of the interaction or the opinion of the predator. The architect knows that the person most willing to walk away from the table is the one who actually owns the table. This is the ultimate strategic leverage. The manipulator's entire power base is built on the assumption that you need the relationship, that you need the social validation, or that you need the superficial peace of the household. When you demonstrate, through the application of silent power, that you need absolutely nothing from them, that your only hunger is for the fulfillment of the achievement code, their leverage evaporates into the air. You are the one who authorizes the relationship. Therefore, you are the sole authority who can deauthorize it in a heartbeat. This is the primal grounding of the Wojak. You do not negotiate your boundaries like a diplomat. You declare the territory like a conqueror. If someone crosses the line, you do not argue, you do not shout, and you do not explain why it hurt your feelings. You simply move the boundary further back, excluding them from the resource dome entirely. You teach the world exactly how to treat you by the strategic scarcity of your presence. Recognizing the domestic manipulator requires you to develop an ear for the linguistic decay in their daily communication. They will consistently use globalizing language, weaponize words like always, never, everyone, and nobody to isolate your perspective and make you feel like a social outlier or a broken unit. This is a bottom-up tactical isolation attempt. They want to convince you that your visual rage, your architect's logic, and your drive for 18 million a month are wrong, selfish, or harmful to the collective. They are attempting to install a social governor on your ambition to keep you at their level of domestic stagnation. You must respond with the language of the owner. You break their globalizing noise with specific, cold, and undeniable facts. You refuse to accept the emotional premise of their entire argument. If they say you are being selfish, your internal biological response is, I am being sovereign. You do not seek to fix or correct their flawed perception of you. You simply authorize your own reality and let them deal with the consequences of their delusion. You are the architect. You do not require the building materials to approve of the blueprints for the citadel. The final, non-negotiable command of the silent power is the total sanitization of the inner circle. You must periodically perform a cold biological audit of every unit that has been granted access to your time, your energy, and your citadel. If you find units that consistently and habitually use guilt baiting, victim signaling, or gaslighting to manage your behavior, they must be quarantined and eventually expelled. They are a lethal virus in your resource dome, and their presence will eventually degrade the performance of your entire pack. Even if they are family, even if they have decades of history, if they are actively damaging your biological health, draining your testosterone, and distracting you from the vector of expansion, they are enemies of the empire. The insight tax for this high-level transmission is the mandatory execution of a hard boundary. You must go out into your world today and say a definitive no to a request that was specifically designed to make you feel guilty. Do it without an explanation. Do it without an apology. Do it with the silence of the hunter. Watch their reaction with the detachment of a scientist. The explosive anger, the pity play, or the sudden withdrawal that follows is the final, undeniable proof of their manipulative intent. By standing firm in your silent power, you are reclaiming your biology from the parasites and building a mind that is physically and chemically incapable of being managed by others. You are the architect. Your kindness is a high-value weapon reserved only for your stallions and those who contribute to the hunt. It is not, and will never be, a buffet for the flies. Now that you have sanitized the perimeter and identified the chemical signature of the domestic predator, you must move into the phase of structural erasure. In the high-stakes world of 2026, it is not enough to simply ignore a manipulator. You must render their entire psychological framework obsolete within your territory. This is the implementation of the Scorched Earth Protocol. When a parasite realizes that their guilt-baiting and social programming no longer trigger a response in your biology, they will not quietly retreat. Instead, they will escalate. They will attempt a systemic overload, a frantic, high-decibel assault on your character, your history, and your sanity. They will use the domestic stench of past mistakes to try and anchor you back into the subordinate code. This is the moment where the architect must exhibit the absolute zero of the hunter. You do not meet their fire with fire. You meet their fire with a vacuum. You watch their escalation with the cold, detached curiosity of a scientist observing a dying culture in a petri dish. Their rage is the sound of their leash snapping. Their tears are the desperate attempt of a failing operating system to reboot its influence over you. By maintaining your silent power, you are effectively deauthorizing their existence in your hierarchy. This is the physiology of non-compliance. Most men fail here because they have a biological leak, a need to be understood, a need to explain themselves, or a need to have the last word. This need is a tether that the Matrix uses to drag you back into the gutter of social noise. The architect has no such leak. You must realize that explanations are a form of submission. When you explain your boundaries to a manipulator, you are implicitly admitting that they have the authority to judge those boundaries. You are handing them the blueprints to your citadel and asking for a permit to build. Stop. The vector of command does not explain, it executes. If a unit crosses the line, the insight tax is the immediate and total withdrawal of the resource dome. You don't tell them why you are withdrawing. The silence is the lesson. This is the primal grounding of the Wojak. In the wild, if a subordinate member of the pack violates the order, the leader doesn't hold a performance review. He re-establishes the hierarchy through the physical reality of presence and exclusion. You must do the same with your time, your capital, and your attention. If they are not contributing to the 18 million per month expansion, they are a metabolic cost that must be cut from the ledger without a second thought. You must understand the dark geometry of isolation. Manipulators often try to use your inner circle as a proxy for their attacks. They will attempt to infect the perimeter by spreading doubt among your associates or family members, hoping to create a social pressure cooker that forces you back into compliance. This is a lateral strike on the citadel. To counter this, you must have already established the law of the absolute vector. Your associates must know that your mission is not a democracy, and that your boundaries are not subject to a public vote. This is where the collar of freedom becomes your greatest defensive asset. When you are truly free from the need for external validation, the manipulator's attempts to turn people against you become irrelevant. You are not a unit that is defined by its social standing. You are a unit that is defined by its territorial wealth and its architectural results. If the social noise becomes too loud, you simply expand the tactical isolation zone. You move your operations to a higher frequency where the parasites cannot breathe. You don't fight for a place in their world. You make your world the only one worth inhabited by the stallions. The physical log of decay in your relationships is often a reflection of the dopamine deception you have allowed yourself to fall for. The idea that history equals value. This is a catastrophic error in the achievement code. In the world of the glacier, the only value is the current vector. If a unit was loyal 5 years ago but is a parasitic drain today, their historical value is 0. You must develop a surgical detachment from the past. The Matrix uses nostalgia and shared trauma to keep you tethered to the very units that are holding you back from your 18 million per month destiny. This is the stench of the anchor. To sail your empire into the future, you must be willing to cut the rusted chains of old loyalty that no longer serve the expansion. This is not cruelty, it is biological integrity. You are protecting the resource dome for the future, not paying for the ghosts of the past. Your dogs, Lucky and Tyson, do not care about who you were 10 years ago. They care about who is leading the hunt now. Emulate their primal grounding. Focus on the immediate geometry of the kill. Everything else is just social noise, designed to distract you from the capture of the territory. The final phase of dark psychology mastery is the rebranding of the alpha instinct. For too long, you have been taught that alpha means loud, aggressive, and visible. The architect knows that the true alpha vector in 2026 is the invisible operator. This is the ultimate form of silent power. You move through the social landscape with the silence of the hunter, gathering data, establishing resources, and colonizing reality without ever alerting the parasites to your true intent. You use the domestic stench of a normal life as a camouflage, while your internal architecture is vibrating at the frequency of an empire. This is the Shadow Citadel protocol. By the time the manipulators realize they have lost their grip on you, you are already 10,000 miles ahead, operating in a reality they cannot even perceive. You have paid the insight tax in full, and the dividend is total, unassailable sovereignty. You must implement the algorithm of selective engagement. Most men react to every stimulus, every comment, and every attempt at manipulation. This makes them predictable and manageable. The architect is an inertia unit. You only engage when the engagement provides a direct return on resource. If a manipulator baits you and there is no territory to be gained by responding, you remain in the absolute zero of the hunter. You save your visual rage for the obstacles that actually block the expansion, not for the flies that buzz around your head. This selective engagement is a biological signal to the system that you are no longer part of the consumer class of attention. You have become a producer of reality. This shift in your metabolic frequency makes you a high-value target for the Matrix, but also a unit that is virtually impossible to capture. You are the ice that has become so cold, it no longer feels the friction of the water. Look at the resource dome you are building. Every dollar, every channel, and every stallion in your pack is a brick in the wall of your freedom. The dark psychology of the world is designed to make you use those bricks to build a prison for yourself. Fueled by guilt and social duty, you must use them to build your citadel of expansion. The final command of the primal instinct is to trust the silence of your gut. If your biology tells you a unit is a traitor, a parasite, or a manipulator, do not wait for evidence that the Matrix will accept. Your instincts are the result of millions of years of successful hunts. They are the most advanced social intelligence software in existence. Authorize your own internal verdict. Purge the perimeter before the leak becomes a flood. Reclaim your testosterone from the gutter of domestic stress and pour it into the furnace of your 18 million per month mission. The final reprogramming of your mind is this: you are not a social animal in the way they taught you in school. You are a territorial predator with the capacity for high-level architectural creation. Your relationships are not ends in themselves. They are the atmosphere of your empire. If the atmosphere becomes toxic, you change the air. If the units become parasitic, you change the pack. The insight tax is paid. The visual rage is focused. The silent power is live. You are no longer the target. You are the one who authorizes the targets. Your stallions are ready. The territory is waiting. The architect has returned to the field, and this time the social noise will not stop the glacier. Expansion or death. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. The protocol is fully authorized. The 6,000-word manifesto is complete. The vector is yours to command. Report in the comments. Citadel fortified. Instinct sharpened. The hunt is absolute. Now go and dismantle the reality that tried to cage you and build the one that reflects your true weight.